Cool, it's by fast. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's event. Thank you very much for joining us, especially as the weather is so nice outside. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Faith. I'm a software developer at Sky. I'm also a volunteer on the Coding Black Females leadership team. And if you don't know, Coding Black Females is the largest network of Black women and non-binary people in tech in the UK. And also we're kind of going worldwide thanks to the pandemic. So yes, we've got members all over the world, the US, Canada, Scotland, Nigeria. So yeah, that's what Coding Black Females is. And we run initiatives like today's event. We also have a number of mentoring programs, boot camp, and I'll show three other initiatives that we have going on at the moment. So we do also have a podcast. So on our podcast, you're able to listen back to previous events like this. We've also got a number of interviews with members of the community, people in different roles. So do go and give that a listen if that interests you. Another thing that we have going on at the moment, we've got a hackathon with EditShare happening on the 19th of June. So if you do want to get involved with that, do head to our website and sign up. There's 2 different sessions going on, so hopefully wherever you are in the world, there's a time that suits you. And then lastly, we hope that you've seen our Visible in Tech campaign. So this is where we're highlighting Black women and non-binary people in tech. So I think we're about 90 people have taken part so far. So if you want to read back some of their stories, or if you want to participate yourself, please do go and check out our website and check out the campaign. So on to today's event, I've put in the chat box, but just as a reminder, if you prefer closed captions, if you're on Zoom or on YouTube, there should be a button at the bottom where you're able to select for closed captions. Also, if you're on Zoom, there is the reactions button where you're able to give non-verbal feedback to the speakers as well. And there's also going to be an opportunity for audience questions at the end. So please just put them in the chat box and I'll try and get through as many of them as I can. And we'll also be asking for feedback just to help make our events better for those who attend. So if you have 2 minutes to spare throughout the call, please do fill out the form. It will only take 2 minutes, but it's really helpful for us to make our events more helpful and useful to you in the future. So I think that's all the housekeeping. So we'll move on to today's event, which is called Tech and Me. And we've got 4 amazing speakers that are from our CBF community. So Toyin, F1, Yasha, and Jessica. And we're going to be discussing neurodiversity, chronic illness, and disability in the tech space, which I hope that all of you can appreciate is an important topic, whether it affects you or not, whether it affects your colleagues or may affect you in the future. It's definitely an important conversation to be having. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by getting to know our speakers a bit better. And then I've got a few questions for them in a panel talk, and then we'll go on to the audience Q&A. So let me stop sharing. Yeah, so panelists, let's begin by getting to know you a bit better. So if you could kind of give us a bit of insight into who you are, what your role is, and kind of how you got into tech. I guess we can start with Nyasha, and then I'll call out the rest of you as we go.
No, I definitely didn't want to start with me. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Faith. It's really lovely to be here with these wonderful ladies. And of course, everyone in the audience as well. Thank you all for joining. So I am Nyasha. I was born in Zimbabwe, but I've lived in the UK for most of my life. And in terms of what I currently get up to, so I have a number of different contracts, which can be anything numbering from like research to working in a sort of community engagement space and learning and development, building websites, and I also run my own professional development platform called Your Career Site. And in terms of tech, I've done, really so many different things that I've had the privilege to be part of, from just working with startups, whether it's like in, video recruitment was probably the first major thing that I did. And I've also looked at sort of a more information management and data science perspective within like private diplomacy and peace building. And I've also been in civic technology. So just, again, all sorts of things that I would say really with a real tech for good slant. And in terms of the things that I've had to like really battle and deal with alongside that, so I have been a long sufferer of depression, probably most significantly. And then in terms of other things as well, there's OCD, which is, I think, and I'm sure there's many things that people also find challenging. And then also a chronic tic disorder. But yeah, I think it's just one of those things where even with all the things that I've battled, I feel that I've been fortunate to at least get some level of support. And I think just learning the resilience from that and really not letting anything that you struggle with like get in the way of your goals. And I think it's also been a journey of kind of discovery and learning like the things that like make you different, whether it's like kind of, ADHD things and things that you, I guess, make you feel like it makes you weird, but actually there's a uniqueness within that. And it's about embracing and accepting yourself.
Thanks, Nyasha. Efwa, shall we go to you next?
Hi everyone. So my name is Ifwa. So I'm a career changer. So I've been in tech for just less than a year. So I used to work in university administration for a number of years. So now I work as an associate site reliability engineer. That was a mouthful. So ensuring that sites are reliable, efficient, and scalable over Sky's OTT platforms such as Sky Go and Now TV. So I got into tech. Not the conventional route of doing computer science. I got in through Sky's Get Into Tech scheme, which Faith is also alumni. So I secured a job after the scheme. So me and tech is so basically I'm dyspraxic. I was diagnosed with dyspraxia when I was 19, which I'll go into a bit more later on. So learning a new skill definitely brought about my dyspraxia, but in tech, it's been quite accommodating with my team and my organization. So yeah, that's a bit about me. I think I'm going to leave it there and give you more information later on.
More to come.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Toyin next.
Hi, so my name's Toyin and I'm a junior solutions manager at a company called Red Ant. So we provide solutions to like retail companies, tech solutions. And so my role kind of merges like business analyst with like a QA tester. So I collect all the requirements from the clients and then the developers will develop it and then I'll test it. And then feed it back to the client, like present it back and then, work from there and kind of go back and forth. So how I got into tech was in year 9, we had an assembly with this guy came in, like a careers guy, and he spoke to us about computing and he told us that it was like a male dominated field and kind of sparked my interest from there because I was like, okay, go on then, what's the challenge? So I took computing GCSE. I loved the coursework bit, loved coding, but I hated the like network side. So I was like, I can't do this for A level because it will just be exams on exams. And then, so I went to sixth form, I did like art, maths and photography. Then I got to uni and I was doing animation. And within the first week we had a lecture and they were like, you can change courses. And I thought, I'm going to go for it. So I changed over to computing. And then I realized like somehow I'd forgotten that I didn't like networks. So I changed again in my second year to web design and development. And then that's kind of when I started to struggle a bit with my like concentration. But I kind of like, I was fine through uni, like I was able to get through it. And then obviously I got this job, which I started 10 months ago now, so last September. But then I started seeing things on like Twitter and stuff, and girls saying like, oh, I'm struggling with like my concentration, ADHD, and people were saying all these like different symptoms they had, and I could relate to all of them. So when I got checked about 5 months ago now, so my diagnosis is quite recent, but I was diagnosed with ADHD and autism. So yeah, I've been kind of like navigating that and like how it's affected my, you know, just, yeah, like how I've gotten here. But it's been helpful to have the diagnosis, because then now I've kind of been able to be kinder to myself in my work. But yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Toyin. And then lastly, we'll head to Jess.
Hiya, nice to meet you. My name's Jess. I'm a software engineer, also freelance writer, currently writing for IT Pro. And I think the biggest the kind of first kind of differentiation point around kind of classes me in the neurodiverse categories around my dyslexia. So I think lots of people kind of look at me a bit funny when I say that I'm a writer that's heavily dyslexic. I found out when I was 18 in sixth form college. I've just found that I was putting in a lot of work, and I wasn't necessarily, I just kept swimming. Yeah, I was putting in a lot of work to just try and kind of get by, and it was a very massive relief to kind of find out a diagnosis, but it kind of left me kind of a little bit jarring, because I was just always so in love with words and literature. So yeah, it caused me to kind of rethink my kind of career a little bit, or my kind of path. Like FY, I'm also a career switcher. So I've had a non-traditional journey into tech. I studied literature at university because I'm a one of the challenge, like Toyin, I guess. I've always been a big fan of writing. I've worked in PR and marketing, and ended up in working for technology clients, and I found almost like I felt like I felt accepted for the first time in a professional environment that, in forever. And since then, I sort of learned how to code in my own time, taught myself, just really enjoyed it. It's just a kind of, problem solving enjoyment. But also, like Toyin, I saw lots of people talking about all of these symptoms around ADHD, and they all just hit home a little bit too closely. So funny enough, I've had my first assessment today, so it's all very fresh, but it feels good to be accepting my brain for exactly how it is, and trying to work with it and have these differences power me and not, hinder me. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. So that's kind of helped us get to know you a little bit better. I think all of you actually mentioned kind of the conditions or illnesses that you have, but I guess for the context of our audience members who may not have the same experiences, how would you kind of describe what your condition is and what it means for you on a day-to-day basis? I guess if we start with Toyin, you mentioned you were diagnosed with ADHD and autism. What does that mean for you on a day-to-day basis?
Yes, so the ADHD side, it means like I struggle to concentrate, and like I struggle with my like short-term memory, and I also struggle to get to sleep at night. Like I've struggled with my sleep for like years. I've gone to the doctors and like been like, I'm tired all the time, but then I didn't realize like recently that's a symptom, kind of like how ADHD affects you because of the hyperactivity. Your brain's constantly going, so I've struggled with my sleep. And then also like being organized and listening to instructions and like processing new information is something that I find quite difficult. And then the autism side, I struggle with like non-verbal communication. So the lockdown's been interesting with, obviously, like I've only been to the office 3 times. So I've only met a handful of people from work, but then like only being able to communicate over Slack is kind of like texting people you don't really know, so I can't pick up on their tone. So yeah, and then new and old like friends, I get kind of anxious meeting up with new people as well, so that's kind of like a difficult thing. So I'm kind of apprehensive about going back to the office because I don't know anyone still, it feels like. And then what else? Like focusing on small details and like things like that, I kind of get a bit bogged down, and I take a bit of like a lot longer to like process things than other people. But because they're comorbid, it's like comorbid means like they're together, like more than one thing. So the like autism kind of hides the hyperactivity. So I've kind of like been able to kind of hide in plain sight, but yeah, like I've noticed personally, whereas other people wouldn't.
Yeah, that's interesting about the comorbidity thing. I hadn't kind of ever anticipated that, but yeah, that's super interesting. I guess, Jess, you've got ADHD as well. Do you identify with what Toyin's saying, or is it slightly different?
Oh, so yeah, I toss one to everything you said. Yeah, yeah, the non-verbal kind of communication can be a bit of an issue, especially when you have those kind of tendencies to ruminate and to kind of to go into almost I know this is a little bit engineering of me, but you know, like almost like a psychological like recursion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
relate to that.
And how about the dyslexia? What does that mean for you, Jess?
Oh, I mean, so this dyslexia and the so it means I need to put in a hell of a lot more. I need to put in a lot of effort to just try and meet the standard requirements, like very simple things like being able to be on time for things, being able to structure my kind of communication, especially when I'm kind of writing something. I really need to put in, I have a lot of like mechanisms I've had to really consciously put in place, otherwise it just doesn't, nothing really works. I think I found that you know, as we're kind of opening up and talking about this more in a sort of more general sense, there are more and more pieces of software, there are more kind of technical solutions that really help. Something simple like Grammarly is great, but yeah, I think it's always worth, I don't know whether or not this is kind of skipping ahead, but I think the main thing that I need to do on a daily basis is just to not judge myself. I think it can be very easy to just judge how you're feeling, and I think, you know, we've survived a hell of a year as a collective, you know, human group. So the last thing we need to be able to like be doing right now is judging ourselves. So I don't know, I guess like kind of trying to work with like acceptance and being like, okay, these are my shortcomings, I need to understand how to plan around them. I know it's a little bit abstract.
That's all right, that makes perfect sense. How about you, Efwa? You mentioned dyspraxia.
Okay, yeah, so with dyspraxia, it affects you in terms of your fine and gross motor skills. So, so basic tasks like, just say, tying your shoelaces could be a lot to do for somebody, or just say even getting dressed, or processing information. So instructions, if you give me a whole load of instructions, I'm like, oh my gosh, what did you say? So I need it to be broken down, and I need to take it in my own pace. So with dyspraxia, some people see dyspraxia as lazy. What's the other one? Poor memory, which is, you know, to some extent, you do have poor memory, but it doesn't affect everyone the same way. So there's so many things about dyspraxia. It can affect your posture, it can affect your memory, hand-eye coordination could be poor, your speech. There's so many elements to it, but it doesn't mean that all the different elements are the same things for everyone else. Some people have mild, some people have severe. So for me, my memory, short-term memory is poor, but my long-term memory is great. So I have to always take notes down, or even vocally say it in a recorder, in order to, because sometimes my hand coordination is not as fast as my mind. And also, what else do I do? Day-to-day basis, I have to break down tasks. I have most of my energy in the morning. So for me to be most effective is the morning. And what else can I say about dyspraxia? I can say time management can be an issue as well. and being forgetful. So people, please don't hold it against dyspraxics in any way. On a day-to-day basis, sometimes I use like things like mind map in order for me to concise my notes down, and read and write software in order to because sometimes I see words and it's just words to me. So I need someone to speak it out to me. The software speaks it out to me so I can gain more context of what information I need to understand. So that's about it, about dyspraxia.
And lastly, how about you, Nyasha? What do your kind of illnesses mean for you on a day-to-day basis?
A lot of what everyone has said has really resonated. I think from, you know, the ADHD perspective, definitely that whole thing of focus being a challenge, and I think time management, and like, because there's so many different ways that things can manifest. And I think for me, another one is there's a sense there in terms of like forgetfulness or something, or it's like someone having a different recollection of things than you. And I think that can be very challenging in a workplace context. And you're like, this is what's been said, and like having loads and loads of things to stay on top of. And then I think I would say maybe the chronic tic disorder, I would say probably the least impact, because I think with chronic tic disorder, it's like maybe most people might have heard of Tourette's. So Tourette's will be a very kind of obvious, more likely to be obvious, I would say, like a motor tic, I think it's called, or a vocal tic. And I think I have seen elements of that within myself as well, and just really trying to have that self-awareness then when you're going and you're like talking to a professional to get your diagnosis. But with the tics, for me, I would say that they're mostly not noticeable, but it's just that involuntary thing. And again, it's just that self-consciousness of you don't want to look weird, and the people be like, oh, what's that? And they're like asking you, and obviously if it's video calls. And then on the OCD front, I think for me, it's like things have to be a certain way, and I have to work really hard to override it, because it's like you're sending an email and it's just, oh my gosh, it can be torturous as much as I love writing. And it's like, it has to be like this, has to be this. And it's all those little things that you're kind of noticing and you're picking up on. And I think, you know, for some people, it can be definitely really debilitating. So I think for me, I'm fortunate in the way that I can even kind of really sometimes overpower, and sometimes I'm just going to give it into the OCD tendencies. But, you know, for example, the whole, like, you might, you know, be switching on lights, it might be this, or you might think, oh no, I didn't turn that off, I didn't this. And it's like, you need to repeat it to be sure that you've done something right, or to be certain. So then it's just like things taking up time as well. And then with the depression side of things, I'm sure for many other people who experience it, for me, definitely, I would say mornings are the hardest. I was like, I would love some of that morning energy, because yeah, it's just, you just honestly just, yeah, it just feels so like darkness and heavy, and like you're again trying to kind of think about how to be positive. You might notice I'm standing right now, so, and I have really changed. If you had said to me standing desk like a year ago, I'd been like, no, that's no way, no, impossible. But I've really kind of making yourself active, and I think forcing yourself to exercise is one of the main ways that I have to try and grapple that, because you just don't want to do those things. And then the other thing that I would say for the depression side of things is, I mean, I'll be, you know, really quite frank, it can, I think at the worst of it, I think for me, it's definitely been, I can recall moments of, you know, suicidal ideation. I wouldn't say that I've ever gotten to a point where I've actively wanted to kind of end my own life in a really like, I'm making a serious effort. Sorry to be dystopic, but yes. And I just wanted to quickly share an article that I had found helpful. And again, sort of, yes, Karen, you get it. So again, sort of a trigger warning, which is at the beginning of the article, but I think it's just part of that whole thing of trying to, as so many people have said in terms of, I can't think who it was just now who was talking about, yeah, Lisa, saying about accepting and not judging yourself, and just, you know, you've got like some sort of chemical imbalance in your head and things that are making things harder for you in terms of how you deal with it. So whether it's exercise, therapy, it's all those things that I have to make sure that I fit in, because I think, and otherwise it can be very, very hard to make yourself just do things. And sorry, the last thing I'd add as well is, I think for me, it's I really just want to keep learning about things as well, because there's all sorts of like triads and things where these things come into play together, and then it's like being aware of how they're like affecting each other, all those different bits and pieces, I think is, yeah, a really key one as well.
Great, thank you everyone for sharing that with us, because I think that's asking you to be vulnerable and share things that are probably quite personal to you. So thank you very much for sharing, and hopefully that's given our audience a bit of context. I guess all of you have mentioned kind of your own kind of coping mechanisms, or kind of ways that you personally kind of get around issues that you're struggling with. But I guess my next question is, have you asked anything of perhaps your teammates or your organization, or like when you were learning to code, kind of your course providers perhaps to make adjustments for you, and kind of are there any adjustments that you've asked for that you would encourage others in a similar position to explore? And this is a free panelist talk, so feel free to jump in rather than me kind of pick on you.
Yeah, so as soon as I joined my employer, I disclosed it. I've never disclosed it in all my working career, but I felt like this employer was like, be your authentic self. And I kind of just ran with it, because where I've used to work is quite, how do you say, quite old school, quite, I used to work for a university, so well, Russell University, that's what I'll just say. And so it was very, no one really understood things, and I felt like at Sky they really embrace who you are. So what I did was I told them as soon as possible. They set up a meeting. When I was going through boot camp, I had constant conversations with my manager, who would just be listening ear, because it wasn't straightforward for me, because boot camp was intense. So for a person like Dyspraxia, you're going to get a lot of information in like 5 weeks, how you're supposed to break it down. But everyone's so supportive. So when I actually started working in my team, I had occupational health, I think it's occupational health, occupational health, make an assessment of me, and they took down all my physical needs, all my learning needs I needed. So that's when I got my mind map and read and write software, and I got standing desks like Nyasha. Am I saying your name right? Am I saying okay? Sorry. Sorry, I'm not really good at pronunciation sometimes. So I got a standing desk, and also I just also got regular meetings as well, one-to-ones. I thought that was really important for me, because if you want me to understand the task, I need to be able to regurgitate what I think is asked of me, and be able to do my things in my own time and not feel rushed. Having the patience of my employer. My manager took the time out to say, what is dyspraxia, and understand it. So just another point as well, access to work. I haven't used it myself per se, but access to work, when you start a new job, you'll be able to have an assessment from, it's a government scheme, have an assessment of your workplace, whether it's your physical needs, your support needs, and even also coaching. I heard there's like dyslexic coaching, there's dyspraxic coaching. So please look into that as well. So there's different avenues, but you have to feel that you're confident enough to speak to your manager, and also comfortable as well, because it took me a long time to say, right, I'm gonna speak to my employees about who I am fully, rather than trying to oh gosh, this is so I can't quite know, trying to just basically hide part of myself. So that's it. Yeah.
No need to apologize. How about the other panelists? Are there any other things you've asked of your organizations that you would encourage others to do as well?
Yeah, I mean, just to jump in on this one, this is something that this is one of the areas that I'm invested a lot of time in every employment situation I've been in. I've always disclosed my dyslexia and my mental health that I face. It's very inarticulate for me, but I've always disclosed my kind of neurodiversity issues at the interview stage. I've found that some employers can sometimes, if businesses are businesses, and sometimes if they have to make adjustments later on in your employment through no fault of their own, and I'm not trying to apologise for any businesses, don't get me wrong here, like but I think they will want to protect themselves, and that's when you start having to look at the Disability Act, and that's when you have to start getting very prescriptive with things. So I always try to I've always mentioned it straight away from the interview stage. It sometimes means that you can get a little bit of extra time if you're kind of doing a take-home assessment. Also a book that I've read that's really useful, I think it's a little bit, don't get me wrong, it's a little bit toxic positivity. Take what you want from it. These kind of situations, sometimes you just got to be authentic and just kind of take it with a tablespoon of salt, but there's one called Faster Than Normal by Peter Shankman, and that's been really helpful in kind of recognizing that if you do feel like you have ADHD tendencies, or if you are diagnosed with ADHD, or if you have dyspraxia or dyslexia, these things are your superpowers. And I know that sounds very eye-rolling and very Disney, but they genuinely do help you to look at problems in a completely different way. I'm sure us engineers on the panel will can attest to the fact that sometimes when you are put in a troubleshooting scenario, or you're debugging something, it will take someone 3 days to find what you can find in 2 seconds. Slightly exaggerating there, of course. But yeah, always disclose from the get-go. Remember that it's your, I know it can feel weird to have, because you're having to make adjustments for it all the time, but it's a gift, and it powers you in ways that you will never understand, because you will always see things through your own lens. And yeah, so I'll stop going to Oprah. I don't want to like ODD it, but yeah, I like going crazy on it. But yeah, I think it's just important that we accept ourselves and really just use it to power us.
No, I totally echo what you're saying. I think that touches on my next question. But lastly, Nyasha or Toyin, do you want to just chip in on that last question before we get into the kind of the positive side that Jess is alluding to?
Yeah, I just want to say saying this has been my first proper job out of uni, out of anything, but I think disclosing it to my employer has been a lot more helpful than hiding it. The head of people and well-being at my company, she's been super, super helpful and in accommodating me. And now I also have once a week I have a meeting with my line manager, and that's been really helpful with imposter syndrome as well, not just the other things I struggle with. It's is this amount of work something that should be this overwhelming? And it's no, actually anyone would be this overwhelmed. So I think it helps regardless, just to even if you don't have something going on, if you need help, to say that you need help with other things as well. It's been really helpful. I would say as well, in terms of software and stuff, I don't know loads about it, but I have a Mac, so there's obviously there's dictation and text to speech. Text to speech, best thing in the world, because when people send me really long messages, I can't I'll read them and I'll take nothing from it. So having text to speech helps, because then you can read it to me. I have Australian Siri, which is the best, and yeah, so it's nice. Those things help me, and I would definitely say keeping a to-do list. If you have ADHD, I'm sorry, you have to keep a to-do list, otherwise you're just going to forget everything. There's no point. And yeah, like we said before, I think being kind to yourself is a really key thing, because otherwise, you can't beat yourself up for things that you just can't do. So yeah, that would be it.
Do you have anything to add, Nyasha?
No, I think Toyin putting it all perfectly, but yeah, I think in my case, obviously, I think fortunately it sounds like people have had good experiences in sharing stuff, and obviously there are situations where you're gonna, come across people who aren't as understanding. And I know for me, it's definitely cost me things, whether it's in terms of progression or this, or just, whether it's do you get that contract extended, or, and I think there's, different intersectionalities coming into play. And, as a Black woman, I think there's definitely something to take into account there. And I think for me, I always think about, colorism as well. But I think, unfortunately, there are some cases where I feel, in how I would describe it, it's the Blackness walks into the room. So you don't always get that grace. But I think at the end of the day, you have to give the grace to yourself. And I think for me, it's just, when I explain it now, I try and, talk about, oh, my sad childhood story and this. But it is important, and, it does matter. And I'm just happy to kind of, wear my heart on my sleeve and just be upfront and say, hey, this is, where I'm coming from. And this is what I've dealt with. Because, there's all sorts of things like, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And, you can talk about, oh, there's this triad, and you can share research. So in my experience, the more you know about what's going on, and you've got that professional support as much as you can, and then you just say, this is the situation that I'm in, And then I think even if it's maybe not the people that you'd want to support you, I think you can always find that assistance somewhere else. Because I know for me, when I felt like I wasn't getting that support from maybe an HR perspective or manager perspective, then, you know, having the Coding Black Females community was like just honestly just like a lifesaver.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing that. I've tried to make a note of everything you've mentioned so we can share out some of these resources later. I just want to go back to the point that Jess was making about superpower, which I say in air quotes because I know not everyone appreciates that term. But I do want to kind of pick up, I don't want this talk to be all about kind of struggle. I just want to pick up and kind of explore kind of what unique insights does your kind of condition or illness or kind of any kind of experience give you that perhaps someone who hasn't had that experience have, if that makes sense. Like what is the other side to it? If you want to kind of see it in kind of binary positive and negative, what would be the kind of positive, again in air quotes, side to it? I guess Jess, if you want to kind of hammer home your point again.
Yes, yeah. So I thought I was going a little bit over the top there with the it's good to kind of acknowledge the positives, isn't it, without like going full. So in one of my previous roles, I was a solutions engineer, and that's an engineer that sits within a sales org. I think Toym, you're a solutions manager, right? So it's very much in that kind of field. I found that I think in order to kind of navigate life, we get quite used to trying alternative methods as a first practice. So I think we are a lot more potentially a lot more resilient, potentially kind of I say abstract thinking kind of comes naturally. I think that sounds a bit, it comes across a little bit annoying when I say that out loud, but I guess, you know, when you think a certain way, you're never going to understand a neurotypical kind of perspective. So I guess being in those sort of environments where you have to problem solve on a daily basis, I think you kind of, I don't know whether or not the my family of panelists kind of agree, but you can sometimes see that flexibility in thought kind of comes out in you in a lot more obvious ways than it might do in your kind of colleagues. What does everyone else think?
Definitely flexibility of thought. It allows you to be more creative rather than just being, you know, one way fits all. You need to think of things outside the box. So I don't just look at things in one route. I try and look at different alternatives because my brain's always going like crazy. It's like, look at this, look at it this way, look at it this way, look at it this way. So I always have to write things down because I can't just think about things in one box, if you can say it like that. And also I would say resilience. I think Lisa definitely touched on it, because for me as a dyspraxic, I've had to work 10 times harder just to do the basics of life. And sometimes I look back and go, oh my gosh, it's taking me like, you know, an hour just to write a simple email. But, you know, that email is detailed. It's detailed. I look at all avenues. I take my time. So it's all about embracing everything about us. And it's hard sometimes, especially when you see, you know, your neurotypicals like doing things quite easily and stress-free. But sometimes you just have to, I have to take a step back and say, look, you're going to get there, but just be patient with yourself. Be patient and be kind, as we've all said today. And I think that's the only things I really kind of thought of. I think also, with being neurodivergent, you're more accepting of people as they are. You take people as they are, the good and the bad. And, you know, for me, I just take people as they are, the good, the bad. And, you know, I'm not saying that the bad people I just accept, you know, as they are, well, accept for them being rude or anything to me. I try and confront people as I can and when I can. Because with growing up, I've been confidence levels were always high, but you just accept people for who they are more than you're than your average person, because you're empathetic and you just feel emotions more in general. So that's my bit.
Nyasha or Toyin, do you have anything else to add to this question?
So yeah, I think first of all, yes, with Afua, definitely with you on that front as well. And I loved how Jessica was putting it with that confidence, because I think for me, I was trying to think coming here, I was like, yeah, what was that moment? And I remember, I think one of my colleagues, he was like, I don't know, he had like a really hectic day, and he was like, he just didn't want to look at his code anymore, and he sent it to me, and he's like, good luck. And I was like, you'll see, you'll see. And then it's like, I think, yeah, there's that pride in, you're able to manage it, I guess, in a way, because it's more how your brain is wired to see those sorts of things. And then I think just with other bits and pieces, yeah, it's like, it can be high attention to detail. And I think it's like you're able to, I think, thrive. And again, using that resilience, as was it Lisa who was saying as well. And I think, yeah, I would definitely say with Afro, like that whole empathy side of things as well, as I think is a real superpower. And I think for me, it's just those moments where you're having that acknowledgement and you're like, actually, I can really thrive with this. And I think someone talked about I'm working in quality assurance before. And I think testing, that was one of those bits as well, where you're like, okay, yeah, repetitive. Yeah, I like this. This feels comfortable. But yeah, so it was one of those moments. And I think, yeah, it's just a case of you leaning into that and actually not having it be something that you feel is going to like count you out, but actually, I'm someone who can really, be an asset and add value in this way. And, it's okay to be, different.
Thank you. Anything to add, Toyin?
Just, yeah, like I think, yeah, like quite a large part of my like role is testing. So I think having that like attention to detail that other people don't really have, and it is enjoyable, like the kind of repetitiveness and like documenting things. It's like, I don't know why, but it's like I don't enjoy it, but I'm good at it. So it's something to, like have. I think we're able to kind of, yeah, like be more creative in the way we solve things. Like just the ability to think differently than, a neurotypical person. I think that is a real advantage in technology. So I think that's definitely something that is key almost. Yeah.
Yeah, because I would say definitely you've all mentioned like resilience, attention to detail, thinking outside of the box. These are all like super important if you're in tech or coding especially, and documenting, like you said, Toyin, like I wish we would have better documenters in my team. So yeah, these are definitely skills that can take you far within the tech space. So I think it was good to kind of highlight that like being your authentic self rather than trying to fit into a mold will actually kind of take you somewhere within the tech industry. So I guess just leading on to kind of another question of mine is there something more that organization or your organization or colleagues or perhaps people on the call who don't have these illnesses or conditions or are neurotypical, is there something more that people can be doing, and kind of what would you suggest?
I would say like I think because of the fact that we have to like communicate through text, I wish like more people use like emojis more. It's really helpful for tone. Like, if you put a smiley face, then I know that people aren't being like rude, but it does really help me understand the tone kind of context of what people are saying. I think my organization though, I think I'm lucky in a sense that they do really put well-being at like the forefront. So, me sharing that I had like these conditions, they've done like nothing but be supportive. So I feel like I've like hit the jackpot in terms of first employers. But I think just I'd say being more mindful, like not sending really long texts and adding emojis, my things. But yeah, that's it.
Any pointers for anyone else?
I think this it's really good when I don't know if a lot of, if anyone identifies with this, but I found that like learning how to program kind of it almost like teaches you how to think all over again. You know, we've kind of taken some of the principles of how the mind works and transferred that into like a literal kind of recipe system for like writing stuff. So I think like loads of I think the kind of the core practices of like pair programming, you know how when you kind of pair with someone, or I don't know whether if you haven't paired with anyone before, sometimes when you pair with someone, you will outline your rules of engagement to begin with and how you'd like to be contacted. And it's very like explicit and very direct and but in a very good faith way. And it's shared in a sort of a way of like, this is my preference. Please, you know, do with that what you will. I think kind of like volunteering that kind of vulnerability up front is like really good when people say like, this is me, this is how I like to talk, this is how I like to interact. Please feel free to share your preferences with me. And it just leaves the kind of this I think it just makes the space, because sometimes we can often bend over backwards trying to double guess what someone would like to do for us or how someone might like to be treated. And it comes from an entirely kind way, but it can just be so cause the opposite effect. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but just sometimes just being vulnerable and then just stepping back and letting someone do their thing.
Yeah, I agree. Efwa or Nyasha, do you have any kind of input on this question?
The only thing I think that's been mentioned a lot is just have regular one-to-ones if you can. It's just my organisation has been really good at that, and they've been understanding and been willing to learn about my learning difference. So if you can just be open. And also lockdown has been a bit hard for me a little bit because I started my role during lockdown, all remote. I've never been to the office. Well, I've been to the office once, but I haven't been to the office since I started the role. So I missed that interaction of getting to see people's tone face to face rather than online. And sometimes not everyone has their cameras on, so you're trying to gauge what they're trying to say via their voice, and sometimes that can be a bit difficult to understand. And also my organisation, what's been happening is like since I've joined, me and a couple of others have started this neurodiversity group in our organisation under the wellbeing umbrella, which has been great. So we have a website, we have a Slack channel. We have a Yammer page where people share what they're going through during work or maybe outside of work or what their children are going through. So if you have a community in an organisation, embrace it and talk with them. If you don't, set one up if you can with others. It's just a great way to meet other people who think differently and work differently and find different techniques and strategies in order to work successfully in your role.
Thanks, Efwa. I think you're saying a lot of panelists are all kind of agreeing, which is great. Nyasha, do you have any thing to add?
Yeah, I think for me it would just be, I guess there's an element there of, I guess, giving the benefit of the doubt. And I guess, you know, we're talking about it can be so hard to, I guess, accept and to embrace yourself. And I think when you have that understanding and that shame empathy, because I think for me, I can definitely think of moments where I feel that I've made space for other people because I can kind of sense, I can say, oh, okay, I can like, you know, have that sense of, yes, this is, you know, someone where it's like not neurotypical behavior. And it's like, because you're seeing that like elements of them like maybe within yourself, but then it's like you're not always feeling that room is being made for you. So I think having a really strong HR function, I think is just, cannot underscore the importance of that, because it just makes a difference when you're able to talk and you're able to speak up about things. And then I think the other thing as well would be, definitely with management. I think even if people who maybe don't necessarily experience similar challenges, but, you know, having that relationship with your manager can just be challenging in general. And I think kind of a little bit when Jessica was saying some stuff, it made me think of, I don't know if people have seen the whole people, like when you start something or you start a new thing, they say, here's my user manual, this is what I like, let's do this, let's do that. So I think just that kind of thing and having that real commitment to you want to help that person to thrive in like whatever way you can do, I think that makes a real difference.
Thank you. There's some really great pointers in there. So hopefully that's been useful to our audience. I've got one final question. So audience members, if you do have some questions, start putting them in the chat box. But I guess my final question to our panelists is kind of on top of this, your kind of experience as say neurodivergent or with illness or with disability, kind of does your race and does your gender kind of add another dimension to your experience, and kind of just want to explore that intersection a bit more?
Yeah, I was very, very reluctant to reveal my diagnosis. So I've known since I was 19, but I've always kind of hid it from everyone. So because one, I'm Black, second, I'm female. Now I'm going to add another layer and say I'm neurodivergent. And, you know, it's not been an easy ride, you know, for females, Black women in the workplace. So to add another layer for them to say, oh, she can't do her role. Oh, she's not quick enough, or she's not competent enough. It took me a long time to just accept me for who I am, and just embrace everything about me, because for me, it wasn't just me that, you know, revealing my diagnosis. It's like getting friends to accept it, getting family members to accept it and embracing me. So all I say is just be yourself. If you're ready to be yourself, be yourself. But just because it's only one you, there's no carbon copy of you. It's taken me a long time, but I'm still learning. I'm not always I'm not going to say to everyone that I'm neurodivergent. It's when it comes up, but just learn about yourself and learn about what sort of needs that you need, and do what you have to do. You don't need to follow everyone's path. Everyone's different. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Efwa. How about everyone else? Does being Black and female kind of impact your experience?
I think I would say that it definitely does, I guess, because yeah, like saying, you know, like there's things that are noticeable about you, like being Black and then being a woman. I think having the added like neurodiversity, it makes it more complex, because it's kind of like that's the kind of thing that you could hide, if you know what I mean. Whereas being Black and a woman, you can't really be like, oh no. So I think for me, I think that's why I wanted to get my diagnosis even more so, because I already am, you know, say at a like disadvantage, but like because of, you know, racism and sexism. So I think I wanted to have the diagnosis so that I knew, and then also that I kind of have, you know, like the Disability Act behind me, and I know I can say, look, I'm struggling with these things, or I don't process things the same way as everyone else. But I think I would say it might be the most simplest part of my identity, because it is the thing that I can choose to disclose. So yeah, that's my experience, I think.
Yeah, that's super interesting about the diagnosis and kind of having that proof that you require help. Hadn't considered that before, and it's also quite a shame considering our kind of healthcare system and how difficult it is for people to get the support and diagnosis that they need. So yeah, that's definitely something I'm taking away from that. Jessica and Nyasha, any further thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a good point. And Toyin, I think the idea of like the bit of you that you get to disclose, I totally just identify with that completely. I think you know, the thing with implicit bias, or like a sort of, you know, unconscious bias, is that people never really need to put a label on it. They can just think that you're difficult, and they never have to kind of explain why or investigate that within themselves, or really, you know, understand anything. And then you're there answering for the unexplained behavior of people that they've encountered in the past. It's yeah, it's really it's strange, because I guess you don't really want to I think it's easy to sometimes get, I don't know whether or not you felt this, FY, when you're kind of with the Russell Group University, but sometimes if when you're just used to assimilating into spaces, it just becomes second nature and you just don't even think about it. You adopt a certain like set of conversation topics, mirroring things. You just try to just fit in because that's just how you've understood how to get by. I thought Nyasha made a really good point as well, like when you're mentioning colorism, because I think it's not talked about enough. Like, the word bully gets thrown around so much when it comes to women, especially Black women, especially darker skin you have. Like when I was working in a US company based in the UK, I found that the perceptions of you being Black in the US versus being Black in the UK were really different, and you had a lot projected onto you. But I think colorism needs to get the exact same recognition as racism because it's even more covert and insidious.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Jess. I mean, that's kind of like a very deep and kind of, yeah, I think what we're saying with kind of this layered experience is definitely something that needs to be spoken about. So I'm glad we're speaking about it. But for people that do cross over multiple intersections, it is like, it's a lot to deal with. Like, it's a lot to have your gender and your race and then your kind of neurodiversity or disability kind of all stacking against you in the society that we have. It's a lot to deal with. So we're going to go on to audience questions now. So please put some in the chat if you do have them. We did have one question from Salma on YouTube, which was, how do you deal with the shame or fear of getting things wrong at work because of your disability? And that's to anyone who wants to answer.
I'm happy to answer for this one as well. So yes, I think it would, for me, go back to other bits that I was making before. I think it's just really, it's so hard because I mean, I'm sure many people can relate to the whole, automatic negative thoughts and just the way that our brain has evolved over time, where it amplifies those negative bits, and you've got social anxiety and it's like, you must fit in, you must get things right. And then if you embarrass yourself, it's like, it's a bigger deal than it needs to be. So I think for me, what's been most helpful is, I think there's interesting representations in media, and definitely it's lacking for certain groups, but at least for me, there was something where someone talked about art. It's like something about, healing and beauty and things. And I was like, yes, because I think there was this line, and I can't remember which movie, that just stayed with me. And it was just kind of the character just having a realization that after all the things that they've dealt with, like, they're actually doing a great job. And I think having that, especially when it can be so easy to minimize what you've done, and it's like when you're focusing on that mistake that you've made, however big or small it might have been, it's like you're discounting all the times that you've done a great job. And actually it's okay to like take up space in that way, where you're like, yes, I'm flawed. Yes, I got it wrong. Yes, I messed up. And actually it's okay. Because I think especially, as the Black community, especially, there's so many people who have fought for us to be, and maybe things are still not quite there yet, but to be considered, like more human in that way. So actually just like staying steadfast in that, for me anyway, and saying, yes, I got it wrong. It's okay. And actually, I'm just going to try and be kind to myself. And I think just, you really have to push it with that self-love, whether it's, I don't know, meditation can be helpful, mindfulness, like audio things. It's just whatever helps you like be kinder to yourself. I think that's what you need to focus on. And I think just, there's that lovely, yes, we'll go back to Oprah, Jessica, you are not your thoughts, you are the awareness of your thoughts. Because it's like your thoughts feel so powerful that they're overwhelming you. But actually you can say, okay, you can label that shame, fear, and you're like moving on. I'm not good at it. I'm just talking about what should be done.
Does anyone else have anything to add to what Nyasha said? Although that was a very thorough answer, so may have covered it. Okay, cool. I'll move on to another question from Joshua, which is quite interesting. do people ever doubt or challenge your neurodivergent conditions? I know a lot of them can be seen as male only. Like autism is much more often diagnosed and accepted in boys. Like ADHD might be seen as a white person issue. So yeah, back to the main question. Do people ever doubt or challenge your conditions?
Yes. Like, yes. I think it's difficult because of the masking. It's, you know, it's not as obvious to people, and that's fair enough, but it's kind of insulting when you say that you're struggling with something and then people decide to say, well, you know, I can't notice, so it doesn't, you know, you can't see what people are struggling with. So I definitely think that people do question whether or not you have those things. And I think it makes it more difficult because, like, I've only recently been diagnosed, but it was like I was kind of in my own pattern of telling myself that I wasn't struggling and, like, you know, this is just like how everyone else is, but it's like it's not. So I think definitely when you know that something's wrong, if you want to get checked, then check it out, and kind of don't really listen to what other people say. If someone's going to tell you that you're not struggling with it, they're not in your head. So definitely, you know, like, believe in yourself and how you're feeling and how it affects you. And, you know, you probably saw a psychiatrist, they're pretty qualified. So yeah, they know what they're talking about. But yeah, people definitely, like, question whether or not you have it. You just have to kind of back yourself in your own knowledge.
I guess having a diagnosis helps with that.
Yeah, I think so. But I think even not having it, like, you can just tell, like, the fact that as well that you'd be willing to go to a professional anyway to ask them to confirm this, you probably, you know, you're struggling with something, and that's enough, I think. Yeah.
So we've got another question from Panama, which may link to what we said already, but I'll ask it as well. So Panama says, how do you manage imposter syndrome with disability? It is something I really struggle with, as I was only diagnosed with an invisible disability at 30. So how do you guys manage imposter syndrome?
So what I do is I tend to journal a lot. I tend to basically state my wins for the day. I think it's really important to celebrate everything that you've won that day. It could be small things like, right, I've cleaned the kitchen, because for me it might take forever for me to do that, but anything you've done, even at work, I've been able to understand a fundamental process, write them down, because sometimes we forget. For me, in my short-term memory, I forget what I'd done like a week ago. But if I look back and say, right, I've achieved this, and surrounding myself with, you know, good people that understand me, I don't tolerate people who disregard me and who I am. So it's about eliminating people who don't support you and being around the community. So when I want to understand more about dyspraxia, I joined a few groups on Facebook, and I've seen some, you know, people on Twitter, and just to gain more understanding, because we're all going through different life struggles, and sometimes you just need a community. You need a squad with you to help you through these imposter syndrome sometimes. And having good work colleagues, I have a few that's on the call right now. They're just supportive, and they've always asked how they can help, and yeah, that's all I can say for now. But there's so many different ways of eliminating imposter syndrome. You don't always get it right. Not every day is rosy. Sometimes I have a really dyspraxic day where I can't even think, I can't even do much work, but, you know, I try and do as much as I can do. So if you're kind to yourself and you're keep yourself calm, and, you know, take things a step at a time, not like don't think about things in weeks, a step at a time, a minute at a time. It will help, rather than trying to conquer the world in a day. You can't do that. Rome wasn't built in a day. It was built however long it was. So yeah, just take a moment at a time, and yeah, that's it for me, really.
I just quickly like to add to that as well. Yes, I was like, woo, yes. I was like, yes, I needed to hear this. I think first of all, there's like so many I think great like perspectives on this with Michelle Obama. I think she's talked about, you know, being in certain rooms with certain people, and actually she's like, you know, they're not any more kind of qualified or better, whatever that means, than any of the rest of us. So I think it's also, there's a level there of kind of pushback in how we think about and how we interpret things. And then from the disability perspective, I'm sure many people have heard the kind of people talking about how like everyone's going to become disabled at some point, you know, in your life, like in terms of, you know, getting into old age. So I think there's that sort of mindset that, okay, yes, maybe you have things that you need to deal with sooner. But again, there's just that, I guess, appreciation of life that it can give in terms of, you know, yes, playing it at a very hard difficulty setting, but whatever happens, I think it's things that can be overcome, and there'll always be a source of like help and support that you can find. In the same way, you know, when you're learning to code, there's always something that's going to work for you, so you don't have to let anything hold you back.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think I need to be careful what I say here, but I think there's like a different way of looking at it, as in, is it, so I guess what we often do is tell minority groups that they're suffering from imposter syndrome. But I guess another way to look at it is it imposter syndrome, or is it just people are being made to kind of work on trying to thrive in structures that just weren't simply built for them, whether that's on account of their gender or their race or their ability or kind of how they think. Oftentimes we're trying to survive and thrive in systems that weren't built for us, and to kind of feel that you don't belong is quite a natural reaction to those systems, and not kind of a reflection on you yourself. But yeah, moving on to another question from Michelangelo on YouTube. He says, thank you all. In your ideal scenario, how early would you choose to communicate any illness or disability with management and other colleagues? So kind of when's the best time?
It's whenever I think it's whenever you feel comfortable. It's all up to you. It's not up to what society says. If you feel like, if you can do it early on, then you'll possibly get the strategies in place that you need. Like maybe you go through your work occupational health, or you might go through access to work if you're in the UK. But do it whenever you feel comfortable. Don't let anyone pressure you. But if you really want things in place, then you should disclose it as soon as possible. You don't need to tell everyone in the team. No, you just need to tell the people that support you, or line manager you. Hopefully they're receptive. With access to work, there's an element where your team can be trained about your health condition, your illness, your learning difference, collectively. So everyone can support you in that team, or your manager can support you, so they can get training funded through access to work. So that's a great nugget to know as well.
I've got a question for Toyin. What is it about Australian Siri?
It's the female Australian Siri, and I don't know, it's just the way she says things. It's just so much more enjoyable. But I think I really like the amount of Siri voices there are. Like, I've gone through them all, and I've picked Australian Siri especially. She just has the best voice.
Thank you. That's just good to know. So we got a question from Sophie Newton. She says, I myself am dyslexic and I'm trying to promote neurodiversity at work, but I sometimes struggle knowing where to start. Thanks for the Slack channel setup, recommendation and book. Is there anything else you would recommend on the book front? So any book recommendations that have helped you? I know, Jessica, you mentioned a book earlier that I didn't note down.
Yeah, it's called Faster Than Normal by Peter Shankman. It's I think with a lot of these books, some of them are kind of, I think there's like a default for them to kind of skew a little bit more sort of middle of the road executive, just get your EA to help you. Like some of them can be really frustratingly reductive, but I think one of my favorite things about Faster Than Normal is it kind of talks about is it acknowledges how recognizing the speed at which your brain can work sometimes can be, you know, it's this thing that you can harness in your favor. And although there's no way that we can ever see life from another perspective, you know, we are inside our own heads and we can only see things from our perspective. Like, it's sometimes easy to forget that, you know, you I know this is very like crass metaphor, but sometimes like it's almost like just instantly being able to, like, you can speak Russian. I mean, obviously you can't just speak Russian, but like it's second nature to you. So yeah, no, faster than normal is really great. And then, to be honest, I think books like Becoming, I think, yeah, Nyasha mentioned it with the kind of, yeah, exactly, the Michelle Obama thing, just leaning into the self-acceptance could be really great, because one thing that you mentioned earlier on, Nyasha, was when you're kind of talking about when you're approaching a task and not beating yourself up about getting it wrong. Like, every single attempt is an attempt, like that's like the step that you're iterating to getting it right. And every single time that, you know, like, say if you're trying to like get up in the morning, okay, you didn't get 6 a.m. but you got 7:30, you know, and tomorrow you can get like 6:45, and it just, yeah, I guess I've strayed from the book recommendation, sorry, but yeah, just being holistic, I guess, with the literature recommendations is.
Yeah, no need to apologize, that's all good information. There was a question from Clara about how do you share at work, and kind of related to GDPR, disclosing your kind of disability status.
So I'm not, maybe Clara, I don't know if you want to add just to make sure I've understood the question, but I mean, for me, my understanding of GDPR is, I don't know if this is necessarily when it would apply, but definitely, you know, in the same way, I think, you know, it's Pride Month and things like that. And I know a situation that, at least for me, comes to mind is like disclosures about any other kind of identity. And, you know, with like disability being a protected characteristic, I don't think anyone would be able to disclose that for you. So I think it's about, you know, you having that agency, and as, you know, F was saying, about when you're comfortable. So when you decide to say something, I think, and if it were to be any sort of kind of GDPR violation and something being shared without your explicit consent and authorization, because obviously there are some situations where you might find it helpful for someone to say on your behalf and kind of say, hey, please, you know, someone with maybe authority something, and asking people to make accommodations. But I think whatever happens, you know, there's loads of great sources online to make sure that you know your rights and you're able to kind of, yeah, Equality Act and arming yourself, as I think Toyin said.
I'm just scanning the chat box for more questions. So if I've missed your question, please just post it again, because there's quite a lot to go through. So I just want to make sure I ask them. There was a question earlier. I know, Nyasha, you answered it in the chat box, but maybe for the benefit of everyone else, how do you manage having the hard conversations with your co-workers and manager when you're in the middle of a depressive episode? That was from Amuche earlier.
I'm happy to expand, but maybe if someone else wanted to give their take.
I found that having the take medication and speak to counsellors regularly for my depression. I found that talking about it in a work scenario is obviously difficult. It's exposing to part of yourself that's kind of, you know, very personal. But I found that sometimes doing it on different channels can really help. I know it sounds really silly, but like sometimes doing a Slack notification, a Slack message with obviously with the emojis taught in, and then doing an email, maybe then discussing it over Zoom. It can feel like you're like repeating yourself and really hammering it home, but by saying the same thing a couple of times and just really kind of, I know that phrase is annoying, but normalizing it and just getting people used to kind of talking, like just hearing the words, that can be really useful. Yeah, I know it's not the best advice, but it can help, I guess, to just, yeah.
Trying to find, Nyasha, what you said in the chat. I don't know, does that cover what your answer was?
Yeah, I mean, the gist of what I was saying, oh gosh, I have to go back and read now, so bad. Right, I think for me, it's really a sense of, I really liked what Jessica, you were saying as well, because it's a case of what works for you. And I know for me, it's sometimes where I probably wouldn't want it to be written. And so it's something, yeah, you might want to just have an informal sort of, oh, hey. So I think for me, yeah, saying it the sooner the better, because I wouldn't want to be in a situation where it's like you haven't said before that this is something that you struggle with. And then like something's happening or you feel like you're not able to do something, because then it's just, again, you know, protecting yourself as a Black woman especially. And I think, Afua, you said it best, that the people who are not there for you, it can be hard, but I think you can get a sense of people with whom you feel a sense of psychological safety. So just that whole, like, you feel you like you can trust them. And it can be very hard. I've heard stories like you can't trust some people. And I think, yeah, there can be those situations, unfortunately, where it's like you're feeling like it's actively used against you. But at the end of the day, I think it's just knowing that whatever happens, you're going to be okay. And I think, you know, it's your truth. It's not something that you're able to control. So I think if you've done the best you can and you've been transparent and you know you've made a serious effort, even if people aren't going to see it or if they're going to whatever, like, you know, downplay it or all those things, it's like, you know, that you can overcome that. And I feel that it will be possible to find spaces where you're sincerely appreciated. And I think, you know, you have a right, like, to, you know, like Naomi Osaka, I don't know if that's come up before, but just, again, like her choosing herself, like, that's freedom.
I totally agree. I think there was a question earlier from Paras. I guess networking and communication is like massive, but in any industry in modern times, but in tech as well. How do you guys kind of get on with networking and communicating whilst also managing kind of your conditions and different ways of seeing the world?
I guess I haven't known that I've known that I've struggled, but I haven't known why. And obviously I've had to like network before this. So I think most of my networking has kind of been just like by force, that I've had to network because I know what I want to like do, you know, like it's kind of like using your, I don't know, what's the word? Not like your goals, like you set goals for yourself. So I think in terms of networking, it's kind of like, well, you kind of have to push yourself out there. And I think on the autism side, it's kind of difficult, like speaking to new people. I don't know how they're going to be. And I find that quite like scary, but you kind of just have to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And it's even more of a like, you know, you have your very specific comfort zones. So you're going to have to kind of crawl out of that. If you have certain goals that you want to achieve, kind of just have to push yourself, I think. I don't know any like good ways, you know, like the things that I did actually really was having friends, having people that I am comfortable with me. Like every time I've gone to network, whether it's like uni or like before uni, I've been with friends. So that's been very helpful. Just to make it comfortable in your own way, what you like, bring that, you know, like it's very personal. It depends what you're struggling with, but I think just try and make it something that's enjoyable in your own sense. Yeah.
I think no one really likes networking, really.
Yeah. So bring friends. I think bringing friends is my big one. But yeah.
I don't know if FY you wanted to jump in or if you were just moving earlier.
No, you can just move on.
I guess we're kind of coming to close, but I just wanted to kind of just ask, how has COVID and lockdown been for you? I know for many it's been like a leveler for those with caring responsibilities, for for women, for people, for non-white people. But what about for you guys? How has COVID and lockdown been a kind of help or a hindrance?
COVID and starting a new role has been challenging, definitely. I missed, you know, seeing the body language and the tone. So I'm actually on the thought that I can't wait to go back into the office like 1 day a week just to meet my team. So I'm looking forward to that. And so in the next couple of weeks, I actually will be hoping I can do so, to go into the office like at least 1 day a week to meet my team at least, because I haven't really met them. I haven't met them face to face. It's all been virtual, and I get really tired with dyspraxia. You can get really tired with meetings throughout the day. So I do love a meeting-free day where I can actually just do some work and not really, because if you go from one meeting and then 10 minutes later you've got another meeting, I'm like, oh my gosh, all this information. So I've basically had enough of Zoom and Teams, but I just say it's been difficult, but I've been able to express that to my my team and told them that I found it difficult at times, and they've been very accommodating. They've been checking up on me constantly, and yeah, I just say I'm taking it each day as it comes, and I can't wait to go back into the office.
How about the rest of the panelists?
I'm like on the fence. I'm a bit nervous to go back. I think because of lockdown, I think it's been, like I've met like maybe 6 or 7 people from work, and there's like 40 people now. And I think it's been weird it'll be going from only having work conversations really to in person, and then like personal conversations with people that you like know in a strange circumstance. So I'm a bit nervous to go back, but I am excited because then I'll be able to read people's tone properly. But yeah, I think I'm excited but also scared. But yeah.
Okay, it's getting close to 7:30, so I'm going to start wrapping things up. But before we go, panelists, I'm going to ask each of you to kind of give one little nugget that you want to leave us with. So I'll give you some time to think, and while you're thinking, I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending. We've had a really great turnout today, and special thanks to our speakers, Efwa, Toyin, Jess and Yasha. They've been incredibly vulnerable and open with us, and that's just made for a really great conversation. So thank you so much. And yeah, if you want to listen back, or if you want to share this conversation with other people, it will be on YouTube hopefully tomorrow, and then we'll also kind of make a podcast out of that and let you kind of know about it through our social media channels. I'm also going to try and share some of the resources and books and things that people, both audience members and panelists, have shared today, because that's all super helpful. And just one final plug, please could you fill out the feedback form if you've attended today as an audience member. It really helps us as volunteers to kind of make events that are useful and helpful to you guys. So it'll only take 2 minutes. I've put the link in the chat. But yes, over to you, panelists, for your final nugget of advice or reflections or things that you want people to take away. I'm going to go in alphabetical order, so that means Efwa.
What I would say is accept every part of you, and don't fight who you are, and just embrace yourself and get a better understanding about you and your difference. That's what I would say. Yeah.
You're just going through the alphabet, just next.
I was second guessing myself then. I was like, hey, yeah. I guess set your own boundaries and don't feel bad about it. You're looking out for you. I think, Toyin, you said this earlier on, back yourself because no one else is going to. And don't be discouraged if people start to treat you maybe without the sort of care that you like to, because the thing about exceptions is they look a hell of a lot like the rule. You don't know them when you come across them. Slightly inarticulate, but hopefully you got the gist.
That's great. Yasha?
I would echo what I've been saying before. I think it's really just for me, it's been helpful just learning as much as you can about things. I think there's so many amazing organizations, you know, there's Black Learning and Achievement and Mental Health, there's, you know, the Black and Asian Network, something therapy network, like whatever it is, just learn as much about the things that you're dealing with and get that support. And then I think the other thing is, it would be, I guess, like leaning into things in a different way, because I think sometimes it's just that whole like inner battle, and actually sometimes you're a lot more capable of things that you can do like in a way that you wouldn't have thought you'd be able to achieve, but actually you can go for it. Speaking as definitely someone who's been like, no, I don't want to do this, I want to do this, and then you do it and actually you're like, oh, actually I was able to handle that. And it's just, you know, your mind like playing tricks on you or saying things or doing different things. But yeah, I think just go for it, and you know, nothing can limit you.
That's right. Toyin, lastly.
I'd just say definitely don't be afraid to seek the support that you need. I think, you know, like speaking to people is the most helpful thing for me. I think as well with like imposter syndrome, being able to ask people, actually, am I doing well at this thing? It helps you when you do have the small hiccups. So it's just, yeah, being kind and reaching out for support, what I'd say.
Thank you, speakers. Again, just want to reiterate, this talk has been so refreshing and open, and I hope it's been useful to our audiences. Loads of thank yous coming through. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Like I said, this event will be available on YouTube and our podcast by the end of this week. So please do share it widely, as yeah, I think, in my opinion, we've had a really great discussion today, and I think others would really benefit from some of the things that have been said. So yeah, thank you everyone. Hope you have a good rest of your evening, and hopefully see you somewhere Coding Black Females related in the near future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.